Screens. And I will place, we are using Nearpod to work on this. I'm going to place the link in the chat. Second, I'm trying to rearrange my screens now. There we go. How's everyone doing? All right. There's the link to the Nearpod. I just placed it in the chat. If you want to go ahead and sign in. So I do want to preface this by saying that typically this lesson, when I do it at conferences, I usually ask for like the workshop time for like 3 hours or so, but we're condensed down to 45. And so what I will do is like kind of quickly go through the overview and then get you started on some of the activities. But for the most part, like I just want to like introduce everything, show you what the lesson is for students. And then the link that I give you at the end, the bit.ly, will actually have like this step-by-step process. And then there's even like some little mini videos there just in case like, you know, you need further understanding of what's going on. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And so I see people are jumping into the Nearpod, and I'm gonna go ahead and replace the link into the chat. And so right now there's just a quick video. I'm just trying to give people time to hop in, and we'll stay on this screen for like another minute, and then we'll just kind of jump in because I do want to value your time. It's right here. Trying to see. All right, so we've got some people who are sharing some songs. Someone shared Any Dance Pop. I like that. And then the song You Wish You Never Heard, Sweet Caroline. Whoa. I would say be careful with that one, right? Saying that out loud, you might get some huge dissenters there going on. I'm gonna go ahead and hide names because I don't want anyone coming after feeling a certain way. Now I will say when I do this with students, with asking them to share their songs that, you know, is their go-to song, and then sharing the ones that they wish that they never heard before, I do take all the songs and put them in a playlist, and then I'm using that during class time, and it's always a good way to connect with students, number one. Number two, you always see like students' reactions, especially about the songs that they don't like. And so I get many who come up to me and say, like, Citizen, I told you I didn't like that song. And I'm like, I get that, but someone else may like it. So that's always fun. Really engages conversation. I see some more, Something Signed by Jackson Brown. Ooh, I need to check that out. And then the Wish They Never Heard is coming in. I like a lot of, I think they're trying to say I like a lot of music. And then Song You Wish You Never Heard, 1877 Cars for Kids. Okay. All right. Let's see, there were still heavy metal of any variety. All right. Good to know. All right, so thank you for sharing those. I will be placing these on the, I do have a playlist that's on our resources too that you could take a look at, and I'll be adding these songs as well. But I'm gonna go ahead and move forward. So here we go. So don't be surprised when your screen moves. I will say this, that if you are only working with one screen, I would say go ahead and hop into the link for the Nearpod. So that way you can actually work on things. Or if you prefer, then go ahead and just look at my screen as we go through this, if that's the kind of mood that you're in. But I just wanted to put that out there so that way you have some different options. So we're here to talk about 3D quilt codes, and my name is Leticia Citizen. So I'm glad to meet you all. And typically I do this with a friend of mine. Her name is Judy Nguyen, but she wasn't able to join this morning, so you only get me. You can find me on the socials at City Coach. Currently, I am an education coach with Samsung Education. I joined the team mid-March, but prior to that, I was an educator for 23 years. And so 18 of those, I was in the classroom. 5 of those, I was an instructional technology coach where I worked at a TK5 school. And I actually did push into every class every 2 weeks for 30 minutes to do digital citizenship, some computer science, some coding, some different things like that. And so I just wanted to give you sort of my background. And now currently in my new role, I do professional development with teachers and still find time to get into the classroom with some of my teacher friends, because I do travel a lot. I know some of you heard Ed pointing that out earlier. Yes, you see my background. This is not a virtual background. I don't disappear. I'm actually in Hawaii, so I'm just sitting out on the patio enjoying the weather. And so now that you've heard a bit about me, I would love to know who's in this space. I see some familiar names, but I would love to just know who you are, what grade you teach, what school, and a fun fact about you. Just if you are not familiar with Nearpod, just to let you know, you're going to type in that like white rectangle that's at the bottom. Please don't press enter until you're ready to submit your response. It doesn't like take you to the next line or anything. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. If you are not in the Nearpod and you prefer to just interact on the chat, I'd love to do that as well. So please go ahead and share. Who is here? So we've got Susan, who works at grade 7. And was it Morrow Middle School? Used to coach figure skating. Yo, that's pretty dope. He used to coach figure skating. I'd be curious now, like, why'd you, because you said you used to, so I'm assuming that you stopped. Why'd you stop? I'm just curious to know. If you want to share in chat, if you want to mute, do that as well. We've got Michael here, who's high school. He coaches water polo and the swim team. Nice. Danielle, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Is that correctly, Danielle? Okay, cool. CTE engineering and makerspace teacher. Who wrote a book called Start Making? Ooh, I need to check that out. Thank you for sharing. Judy's here. Good to see you, Judy. Title I school, interesting factoid. I bake sourdough. Okay. I would love to have some like at our next like Q meetup or something. That's really dope. So Susan, you said you stopped because you wanted your weekends back. COVID made ice time and coaching very, very challenging. Hey, I understand, right? We need to take back a lot of our time. I've been actually shedding some things lately too. I'm in a doctoral program, so my time needs to be in writing now, and so I completely understand. But I hope that you find time to still get on the ice, and maybe that's like your own time to do that. So thank you all. I see that we've got some media arts folks here from K5. We've got biology focus folks, curriculum support. See, you teach at your own elementary school. Like, you own elementary school, or that's where you used to go, Helen? I'm curious. I need some clarification here. I currently teach at my elementary school. Gotta let me know. All right, so thank you all. If you are still typing, go ahead and submit now. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Helen, I still like need some answers about that elementary school thing. All right. I do want to give a shout out and really pay homage to Dr. Natrice Gaskins, who I've provided her link here on Twitter. I do want to state that this lesson that I'm going to share with you today, I actually got the idea from her and I've modified it a bit. But just to give you some background, it was 2020, right? We were all in a virtual space. And I have a dear friend who works in San Bernardino County. She reached out to me and said, hey, she wanted to do a weekend with some middle school girls to get them into, computer science and STEM, a mixture of things. So she asked me to do a workshop for 3 hours with some middle school girls. And I said, okay, no problem. Reached out to my friend Judy. We talked about like what are some things that we could do together. She brought up about Dr. Latrice Gaskins. And I have to tell you, if you check out her website, since I've like come to know this woman, she what got me is because she does art with AI before like AI was a thing, right, in our space. But since then, she has been working with the Smithsonian. She has a book. She's like constantly doing art. But she also was teaching high school and middle school, and then she also teaches at a college. And so she was doing this lesson on quote codes and like bringing in with students and really doing this historical background with them, but then combining it with 3D printing and things like that. And so we went on ahead, and like I said, I love to pay homage to her because she inspired us to go ahead and use her lesson and modify it a bit, because that's what we do in education. But I want to make sure that you all check her out because she is an amazing person to follow, and get her book and see the things that she's doing with the Smithsonian. And so the why for today is really about, as you can see here on this side, exploring individual identities to build an understanding within our community and of our community, to connect the past with the present, really harness this digital tech to then celebrate these learners that are in front of us who are capable of critical thinking, being storytellers, and just their curiosity, right? To cultivate a space where each of our students' voice is heard in a variety of ways, whether that is verbally or through some form of art, however they're choosing to express themselves, that we are giving this space, or that we are honoring this space for them to go ahead and share in that way. Relationships are truly nurtured. And then lastly, really calling on Dr. Ruda and Sims Bishop's windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors, actually allowing that time with our students to do so that way they can engage in conversations about like critical issues that are happening around them, through them, or they're experiencing them in some type of way. And then connecting this as well to the Learning for Justice, social justice standards. And so there, if you click on those words that are there, the Learning for Justice, it will actually take you to the link where the social justice standards are there for you to peruse. There are also, there's an entire framework. You can download them. You can actually see how these standards are applicable to grades K through 12, and they give you like realistic lessons that honestly probably you're already like doing some of them, but then ways to enhance that according to grade span. And so you can take a look at that at your leisure. But I just we pulled out some that really apply to this lesson, right? So you've got some identity anchor standards where students can develop this positive social identity, express pride and confidence, things like that. There's another set as well from the diversity anchor standards where students are developing this language and actually learning how to name things accurately and respectfully in regards to how they like talk about each other and do things, and how they respond to diversity. And so we talked about the why and the social justice standards, and now we're going to hop into connecting quote codes of the Underground Railroad, and then moving into building and ending with like some sharing in a reflection space. So to start off with students, there's this background lesson that's here. You can go ahead and click on it. And again, you will have access to all of this, but I just want to take you through to show you how we're starting off. Like, again, I started doing this with middle school girls. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. With middle school girls, hold on, I'll put the link in the chat too for this lesson. But we did this with middle school girls, and then I started doing this with my 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. There's a link, and again, you'll get this afterwards too. But just, and you know, you can choose like who you want to do this with. This lesson that I share with you as well, you are able to edit it as you see fit, but I just wanted you to kind of see what it is. And so starting off with this quilt from Marie Claire Bryant, walking students through this, having them to read it, and then having them to one, highlight some of the words that like really stick out to them, giving students a chance to talk about why they chose those two to four words. And then moving into a space, and again, I'm just showing you this so that way you will know, so that we can move into the creating. But then again, having them to sit with this quilt and then just to share some immediate thoughts that come to mind about it. So before we have them like looking at particular words, now we're looking at the quote as a whole, and having students share their thoughts, share their wonders, if they have any connections that they see going on, maybe taking some things that they've experienced themselves or things that we've been learning in the classroom. And so they would share in this space. And then bringing in some things that Dr. DeGaskins also talks about, and how quilt making, there is evidence out there that says, yes, during enslaved times, quilts were used, and on those quilts, there were particular codes that then dictated or shared information to those who were escaping, like where to go to next, or if this was a safe space or whatever that was. So there's enough evidence that says, yes, this is what was happening. And then there's evidence that says like, no, not necessarily, not in that way, but like having students to explore both perspectives on that, and then also connecting it to understanding that like, regardless if that's how it was used in that time, quilts were also used to tell stories regardless. And so they were telling those stories through symbols because, one, we have to recognize language was very limited in terms of like not being able to use words. And so they used symbols that then were used to represent either their lived experiences or things that they were seeing, or to really tell this story. And so how we continue to use that even to this day with quilts. I like to bring up the time where I grew up in the 80s, where AIDS, when it was a huge issue, that then, and not to say that it's not an issue now, but I'm just saying like when it was starting to come to the forefront and people were talking about it, how quilts were then created by families for a person that like had passed in their family that had AIDS, or maybe they contributed to it. And so again, just sharing how and looking at how quilts were really used to tell these stories. I even bring in, I have a quote from my family that then I share with them. And so then on this Padlet, there's some more information, again, that students are going to dive into, and they're going to really pull out, what is it that we know about this? What is it that we believe? And then what is going to inspire us? And again, so this is just setting, it's creating that setup for what we're going to do next, but really tying it into this historical aspect and then bringing it to the present as well. There's even information in it that talks about the quilting bees who still exist in the South and how they spend time together creating quilts to tell stories of their experiences and of their families. All right, so coming back to the Nearpod, and again, I know it wasn't working on the Nearpod, but you will definitely have access to it afterwards. And so some other things that I like to share too is just picture books that I also use with students. So I shared with you that for the past 5 years, I was an instructional technology coach. And so I pushed into classrooms. And when it came time for me to actually do this lesson with 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, I would ask for a week to do this lesson. And I would ask for about 45 minutes a day to do this with students. So I want to acknowledge, I know usually I get the question of like how much time does it take to do this lesson? And so for those of you that are in these self-contained classrooms, I would say the beginning part of like one day is like me doing that lesson, but then to do the background, that's about 45 minutes. And it's usually like how long, it really is determined on like how engaged students are and what questions that they're asking and what information that they're sharing and how deep they want to go. I'll say that part. Then the next 4 days is all about like building. And again, I'm asking teachers, because I'm going in about 30 to 45 minutes. But then for like middle school and high school, because I know that you're pressed for time, then again, like spreading that out and what does that look like? I know some teachers can handle it differently because they're on block schedules. Those of you with shorter time, you would really have to like span out what you think that would look like. I know there's a question of, are there any higher grade books that are also relevant? Possibly, and I don't know what those are, and I can look. However, I will say that even with these picture books, they are still very useful because I did these with the middle school student girls. Like these are still helpful for middle and high school because of the information that's there, the imagery that's there, right? There are different ways that you can definitely do this. And so, and you find oftentimes too that a lot of the picture books are for like upper grades too. But if you find any, and if you know of any that I don't have listed here, please, by all means, please do share with me. And that way I can add that to the resources as well. So what I do with these books is I don't share on the first day, but the next, like I said, because I was asking for a week's time with classrooms, each day when I would come in, I would start off with one of these books. And then that would help us like get into the mood and going into, now we're going to go into this creation part of what we were doing for each day. Any other questions so far? I think I was trying to, Denise, you shared, are you, oh, you also looking to, oh, thank you. All right, so I see some information here about a book. Thank you, Denise. I'm trying to take the meeting. Okay. All right, I just want to make sure. So now we're going to jump into the reflection and preparation for the quilt symbols. So I know, rest in peace, Jamboard. I know it's going away. It's still working right now. So I will add to that with this lesson, the choices that we made about using particular ed tech tools was based on, at the time, what we had access to and what we wanted to use universally with the middle school girls, that when we were doing it with them, and then what stuff that I had access to in my school. So by all means, please, if you, I would say the ed tech tool itself is not the important part. The important part is like creating or leveraging spaces for students to go ahead and document things, and then having a space to share. So this can definitely be done with paper and pencil as well, or with Post-its, or having students to journal. So please don't get bogged down by like, oh no, this is the tool that they use. Not the important part. Think about the activity itself, and then you can modify it so that way you can fit how you want students or what students have access to in your classroom. So with this first exercise, we did use Jamboard, something that we're going to have to change up on. But if you want to go ahead and get into that Jamboard, now the links that I've set up here, and I also want to add that too, the resource that I give you at the end, the links that we have to these different things, especially when it has to do with like Google tools, we've made it so that way it forces you to make a copy. Okay. Now I know some of you are going to say, well, for Jamboard, you can have, you know, numerous students working at the same time collaboratively. Absolutely, you are correct. However, when I'm thinking about time that I had to do this lesson and thinking about time for you as well, when you're with students, the last thing I want to hear in that moment is like, Danielle erased mine. Oh no, mine went away. Nope, I'm on slide 4. And even if you organize it in a way that like every kid had their own slide, so-and-so is still, you know, Daniel could go ahead and have a brain fart and not do it. And decide to, you know, be mischievous and go do some other things. So we set this up so that way every student got their own Jamboard, so that way they could focus on getting their responses down, right? Yes, and you know, Jamboard is going away as well, right? Believe in the coming year. So for now, we're doing this, but please, by all means, you can set up again how you want to do that. The idea is that this is time for students to go ahead and answer these 4 questions. So I do want to add, these were questions that Judy and I came up with, and that I've continued to use with my students. You can go ahead and change them as well to see, but it's all about just having students to write down, and I'll have you do this at this time too. If you just want to share in the chat, you can do that as well. What I want you to think about, what is a symbol that represents something that you love doing? What is a symbol that represents something you want to learn how to do? what's a symbol that represents what I want people to remember about me? And then what is a symbol that represents something about me that I would like to share with the world one day? So I'll give you some time to process that. If you want to share in the chat, if you're doing on your own Jamboard, go ahead and do that. I will add that when I do this with students, whether it is on the Jamboard, whether it is on some Post-its, and then we have like 4 corners where they go and post them, and they're just writing that word. They're not drawing, you're not writing a complete sentence, you're not telling me your why, just going ahead and writing that answer. You also have to teach what a symbol means. It's a really abstract concept. Yes. So there are some students who will ask that. Most times when I go in, students have some idea of what a symbol is, but you can definitely have that conversation with students, right? Even using some things like examples in the classroom that we talk about, like if you wanted to talk about, because you're a writer, what are some things that you could, what's something, what's a picture, what's an image that like that you're actually use when you're writing that then would represent your writing, right? And so some people will say a pencil. So I might say a book, whatever that is. So having that conversation, absolutely. The other thing that I want to point out as you're like going through those symbols, and you know, even for today, if you just want to write down one, go ahead and do that as well. But the next part, if you come back to the Nearpod, is I believe in, even when students are doing like their individual writing or a personal writing and they're doing it for themselves, that there should, I always like to create a space where students could go ahead and share as well. So whether that is through edtech tool or digital tools for in writing, if we're doing a gallery walk, if it is online, then I like to always have a space where students can go ahead and share that. I will also add the caveat that oftentimes I give students the choice too, if they're not in a space that they want to share in that moment for that day, then by all means, they don't have to. So I give students that choice. Most times, because of the space that the culture that we've created in the classroom, students are willing to, but oftentimes, or sometimes there are times where like students are not okay and they just don't want to in that moment, or it's very personal for them, or they're just not willing to be that transparent for others to see. They have that as well. So I had created this again because of who we were working with and settings that I've done this in, especially when we were virtual. Setting up like a wakelet for students to go ahead and take a screenshot, and really showing them what that means to take a screenshot of their Jamboard and then sharing it here in this space. Okay, we don't have to do that right now. But does anyone want to share like one of the symbols that they either want, something that they love, something that they want to learn how to do, what you want them to remember you by, like to share with the world? Okay, we're all good. All right, so coming back to the Nearpod, and if you're still typing, you can go ahead and share that there as well. So then the next step is, after having students go ahead and type out or share the 4 symbols to answer those questions, one for each question, then the next step is to go ahead and create a quilt square of their symbol. Now, just want to tell you a quick story that when Judy and I were first putting this together and figuring out how we wanted students to do it. Now, granted, when we first did this was pre like AI spaces that could go ahead and just have the symbol there, or just having students to download. This is really, we wanted to really focus on having students to create and leveraging tools that would allow them to do that without just like saying the word and then something makes it for them, right? And so what we did was, because I was using Google Drawings with my students quite often, then that was the space that we wanted to use. Now, granted, at the time, like auto draw was a thing. Judy had showed me that, but again, it was like I really want students to really like draw their own and really be representative of what they're doing, right? Like even when you're quilting, like you're going through and you're like trying to create these symbols. So we really wanted them to authentically create for themselves. And so what we did was we created a Google drawing template that's set to 2 by 2 in inches. So that way they could go ahead and draw their symbol. Now yep, I had a feeling that was going to happen. So I am actually going to give you the link. And again, you'll have access to this when you, on the resource that I give you, it works on there, but for some reason, Nearpod, it just refused to. So I'm putting that link there, but that link will allow you to make a copy of the template that we set up. So that way it's just 2 by 2. Okay, and we just set it up by 2 by 2. So that way it's easier to go ahead and bring it into Tinkercad. The other thing is students are going to make a copy of this 4 times because their code or their symbol that they're going to draw needs its own file. Okay, so they're going to copy it 4 times, and this is where you come in and help them set up some type of naming mechanism so they can name it, you know, with their initials and say symbol 1, and then the next one, their initials, symbol 2, you know, continue, however you want that to be, but really having them set up that template for them. Now, in the resource that I give you, it shows you if you don't know how to change the size of this, then it's simple that I do have a like quick tutorial on how to do that in the resources. But basically, when you're doing this, so I'll walk you through it very quickly. And again, yes, there are other tools that you can use, but this is what we wanted to use with students to really give them a chance to do drawing for themselves in a virtual space. So the first thing is I walk students through this. Now I will throw this thing out as well. Please, for any of these different activities, please don't, if you are using technology or digital tech, please do not let this activity be the first time that students are seeing this EdTech tool, because then the frustration is real and it's enhanced in a way that like it delays. Again, I'm thinking about timing with the students that I'm meeting with. You too are about like timing because you've got to stay on these certain pacing scales, right? And so we really want to be intentional about like how we are leveraging our time and these tools with students. So again, please don't let the first time that if you're going to use Google Drawings, don't let this be the first time that they're like getting their hands on it, because then it intensifies the frustration with students. So what I would do with teachers, again, because I'm not in there with them, I would like ask teachers when I'm coming in at my normal time that I would like start off with like a mini activity where I'm just like, all right, so we're going to use Google Drawings, and then we'll like practice drawing like some little images or whatever. Or maybe it's like low scale, or we'll take something that they're learning in class and then we'll use Google Drawings for it. So I'm just trying to build up to when I'm coming in and we do this lesson that they're like ready to go. Now, I'm not saying that it eliminates all the questions and frustrations, but it like drops it so that way it's minimal. And I'm also aware of the students who like struggle with processing how to use this, and I'm working with them more one-on-one. So I start off with students by coming into shapes, having them to select the square, and we're actually going to create a border. Right now, you'll notice that anytime you grab the shape, it automatically fills in with blue. It doesn't need the fill in. So I show students how to come into the bucket symbol that's here and go ahead and make it transparent. And then the second thing that I always show students with anything that they bring in to start drawing, we want to increase the thickness of our border for all the things that we're doing. So they're going to come to the border weight. And I tell them you can select anywhere from 3 or 4, right? So this really helps that when we bring this in to Tinkercad, and then when we go to print, that they'll have that thickness there. Now, here's another thing I get. yes, I'm fully aware that students can draw in Tinkercad. So for some of you, you might want to, if your students are like well-versed in Tinkercad and they are ready to go, you can actually skip this part of the drawing and have them do all their drawing in Tinkercad. I like to do things in isolation for students just so that way they can process everything that we're doing. And again, for some students, it's a struggle with the 3D, and even when you can make it flat, it's a whole thing when we're trying to draw in Tinkercad, and I do that for a different lesson. So I like to do it here so that way they can understand the process that we're going through. So they need their border to start off, and then we learn how to use the shapes to go ahead and like make the things that we're making. Now, again, as we're drawing, we talk about how like every part that you draw somehow needs to touch the edge, so that when we're bringing it into Tinkercad and we print, it won't be a hot mess. The other thing is, it doesn't matter what it's filled in with. That part's not going to matter because it's going to match the filament that we're using if you are printing these. Some teachers have talked about and shared how they used laser printers, that they use Crickets because they're SGV files. I'm just printing them out. So you've got different options. I'm just here to show you the one way that you can do it, right? So students are building, and I just want to show you some examples. So here's my symbol one. One for me was like a computer. And so I just use the different shapes that are here to then make my computer. Symbol 2, I had a cross. Symbol 3, I made a microphone. Now here's the thing, when Judy and I first did this, she was like, oh, you could just like download and bring in an image. And I'm like, Judy, that's not how we want to do it. Now students can go ahead and bring an image and put it on the side, so that way they have it as a guide. But again, it was really having students to go ahead and use the shapes that are here, as well as you do have a scribble line that you can do freehand. Okay. Any questions about that process? Now, usually this can take about like 2 45-minute blocks, but that second half of that 45-minute block, like the next day, is not as it doesn't take the whole 45 minutes, if I want to say. All right. For the sake of time, because I know we've got like 8 minutes to go, I'm gonna like quickly walk you through the rest of what happens. So once you've what?
I accidentally closed all the room.
Leticia, you're muted.
They keep like muting me back. Thank you for that. Like I unmuted and then I made it back. Okay, here we go. So after students have created their symbols, they are going to download each file as a PNG. Now, I will note this, and I know someone's going to remind me anyways. Yes, when you go to download, there is an option for an SVG file. You are absolutely correct. However, yes, Danielle, thank you. Someone understands that like when you do that, I can't find the rhyme or reason as to like why sometimes it works and why sometimes it doesn't. So to eliminate all of that, we have students go ahead and download it as a PNG. Once they download it as a PNG, and I'm trying to make sure, okay, then we use Conversio because of one, it doesn't require students to log in. 2, there are some like little ads on the side, but so far they're like, it's just like one that tells you something about like logging in, but they don't have to. The link that we set up and that we give students is already set, so that way it goes from PNG to SVG. This again is why it's important to like have students to be specific about how they label each of their files, but they're gonna, and they can bring in all 4 files at one time. It will quickly convert it to an SVG, and now they're ready to move into Tinkercad. I'm trying to do this quickly, so I apologize. After they download the files, after they've converted them to an SVG, Now they're gonna start designing their 3D quilts, right? Usually I ask how many of you have used Tinkercad. You can share in the chat if you've used Tinkercad or not. Some people, yes, and please share things. Yes, they are absolutely. Oh, Danielle said she uses something else. So I need to add that and check that one out. Thank you, Danielle. So once you're in Tinkercad, right, then what happens is students will go ahead and import their SVG files into Tinkercad. I walked them through, and again, there are small videos if you're not familiar with Tinkercad. I have like small, like quick videos on how to like access everything. You can set up classrooms in there. You can pull from Google Classroom. You can set them up manually with a CSV file. But basically, students are going to bring in their files. I want to go back to one that I've already created. When they bring them in, then students can go ahead and we want them to change those files to 40 by 40. And the reason why we have them do it 40 by 40 is because the directions that I give students, and again, you can adjust this as you see fit, that we ask students to make a 4 by 4 quilt using only those 4 symbols that they created. So they're going to duplicate those symbols as they see fit because they're composing a story. So that's what we tell them. Think about the story. So if you want to give students time beforehand, if they're going to do it as they're in the process of doing that, they're going to go ahead and put this quilt together using only their 4 symbols. I tell them, don't worry about the colors because again, when we 3D print them, it's going to come out in the filament that it's there. But they're creating this that then conveys some type of story. There are also extensions that we do with students which I love in Tinkercad, that they can go ahead and invite people to design together. So after they create their own quilts and we print that out, then they make a duplicate and now they're going to partner up with about 2 to 4 people and then they're going to create a quilt together as well to convey a different story. And they get to decide how many of their symbols they're going to include in that to tell a story together. So I will add that no, you don't need to 3D print all of these if you don't have access to the printer. We've heard teachers say that they've printed them, they've created little stickers, they've done the Cricut, they've done the laser printer. There are different options, different ways that you could go about this. Because I did have access to a 3D printer, my students printed them out. They're usually printed out to about a size of a paper, 8 by 8 kind of thing. Some teachers have even done it where it's even smaller. Some have done it so that way they've printed each symbol that each kid had, and then together they put together a class quilt. And then after this, then the extension is that students are going to do some writing, and so they have options. Are you going to write a story? Are you going to, write a narrative? They write poetry. I have some kids that write a song. I've got some kids who will go into Scratch and do a whole nother like coding thing to convey their story that they did. So giving students truly an option of how they want to tell their story beyond what they've already 3D printed or whatever the module that you're going to use with students. Again, I always create a space. You gotta be kidding me. I always create a space for students to then take a screenshot of their quilt as well. We put it on a Google slide deck that they all have access to. And then they're like sharing some thoughts, really giving praise to students about their quilts. So that's there for you to take a look. And there we go. And then there's a space too that I was going to ask for some distinction activities, but we're already at time. So I want to make sure that you get the link. Here's the link to the resources. Again, it's all laid out on a Wakelet, and it just goes in a linear fashion, step by step, of what to do with students. Let me see. I see some questions, some things that are going on. The place I will plant my teeth, I would appreciate any references, links.
Well,
Welcome